have a seat. We have plenty of seats in the front row, close to the action. Thanks to everyone for coming to our meetup tonight. I'm Artie Merritt, one of the co-founders of Dashbot. Before we get started, we just want to say thank you to the Scrum team for hosting us here tonight. If anyone is an early stage startup looking for investment, definitely Scrum's a great investor to have. They let us use a space like this. They're really helpful with intros to other investors and customers, and just been a great group of folks to work with. And we have me here from Scrum floating around, so feel free to chat with her, or if you want intros and I'll ask any of us, we're happy to make an intro to Scrum. So before we get started with the panel, we just wanted to walk through a quick demo of Dashbot, and Justin, one of our account execs, is going to do that.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Yeah, I'm gonna walk you through our platform, what we do, just to give you a sense of what Dashbot is, and let me know if you have any questions. But essentially, we are analytics and optimization platform for any conversational interface. So whether it's on Facebook Messenger, Alexa, Google Home, really any conversations that your users are having, whether with live agents or with a bot, we can ingest that data and then show you a lot of the reports that you can see here. And to date, we've processed a little over 78 billion messages. So we're seeing about 1 billion messages every week to week and a half. So we're super excited to see the growth in this space. And let me go ahead and dive into our platform. Cool. So our bot, this is a dummy bot, but essentially the use case here is that it's a movie bot where you can look up movie titles as well as locations, and then have the ability to purchase a ticket within the experience. And really any platform that you integrate with, these reports are going to look the same. So whether it's on voice, web chat, really anything, we show you the reports that are, the structure is basically the same. In our dashboard, you'll see a quick summary of your users, so message as well as user activity, as well as like a live message rate to kind of understand, when your bot may be failing. We can show you that here with our live message rate snippet. And then we show you quick snippets of your retention as well as snippets of the conversational analytics. We do have our table stake metrics, so users, session, engagement. We're not going to cover that today. But where we really specialize is around the conversations itself. And so we do have reports specifically around what are the top things people are saying to your users. We can filter by different modalities here, as well as what are the top responses your bot is responding with. And if you're using NLP, essentially we do have separate reports around top intents in and out. What we show you is basically all the messages that roll under that specific intent. We can show you how many times it was hit, over how many users, over how many sessions, as well as your abandonment rate. So a lot of our customers like to utilize this tool to understand what intents have high abandonment rate, and then if it's not at the end of the flow, essentially we give you the ability to dig in and see where you need to optimize from there. We also show you your not handled report. So this is a great way to basically understand how your bot is performing. With this graph, you'll see the number of messages that contain this intent, as well as how many users sent this intent, and what percentage of your total messages that are incoming are tagged with this not handled, which we call your default fallback intent. And then from here, we roll up all the different messages in which your users are saying to your bot that your bot doesn't understand, right? So now you can look at the different use cases. As you can imagine, people say things differently. Conversations are unstructured. And so what we do is we have a feature called phrase clusters, which basically groups based on semantic meaning of the utterance. So now we can show you the 8 different ways that people said, okay, thank you. Basically what your NLP tagged this with, which is your not handled. And then from here, you can export directly into like a dialogue flow to be able to use this as training data for new intents, or if you wanted to add these training phrases to a current intent, this is a great way to do that. Another use case for this is essentially we have a report where it shows you where you may be mishandling the conversation. So if I lower the similarity threshold here, essentially I'm widening these buckets, and then now I can see the different intents that are being tagged. And under this, please can you help me all these utterance should relate to that specific seed phrase, but now we can see the different intents that are being tagged here. So for instance, looking for help, my bot is thinking that my user is looking for the movie help, not looking for assistance. So this is a great way to start debugging what your NLP may be mistagging the conversation with, and then be able to dig in and retrain your model there. Another report that we like to show is our goals. This was basically built to help you understand escalation and containment. And since we're at a customer service meetup here, essentially what it shows is basically this speaks to agent intent, which is what we consider our escalation intent. I think I preloaded it here. But essentially from here, you can see the number of users that ever engaged with your bot. Over this period of time, how many of the users were contained versus how many were escalated. And then we give you the ability to dig into what led to escalation. So with our paths view, essentially you can see the turns in the conversation that lead to escalation, and especially if it's something that you feel that your bot should have handled, whether it's like a password reset or it's a specific use case that you built the bot for. This will give you context in terms of what happened within the conversation, and then the ability to look into the transcripts for a particular flow that's interesting. And then the last piece that I wanted to show you was our audience builder, which is our audience segmentation tool. And what this is going to do is basically segment your audience based on any behavioral data or any metadata that you're passing over to us. So whether you guys are tagging a user like, oh, this user is from this company and they're a gold customer or whatever it is, you can pass that over to us. What you can do is segment your audiences. So basically with any metadata, so for instance, like a movie club member, I say true, or if I'm doing any A/B testing, I can also segment my audience from here. A couple of different use cases. Essentially, you can export this via CSV, input this into your CRM, which is always helpful, and then we can also save this segment, and then apply them into our goals functionality. So for instance, if I knew a customer was in a specific region, or I want to understand what regions are leading to higher escalation, essentially I can build a segment here and then apply that into our goals functionality, where now I can basically say, out of all the users that escalated, how many of them are gold partners? How many of them are silver partners? I can basically create a segment here and then be able to apply that to our goals section. So let me show this. So by creating a segment, essentially I can filter, see a segment here where I've built an audience builder, and then apply that into this report, and then be able to see what are the most common paths for that particular segment of users. That is interesting for a lot of our customers today. That's a brief overview of what we're doing. Any questions? No questions. All right. Artie?
Oh, yeah. So, yeah. We get the panelists up here. Let's close that. A couple different microphones. Yeah, here. One of you guys can use this chair. There's two different microphones. How's this? You just have to turn them on. It's on? All right. One last. Hello. Well, thanks again, everyone, for coming out. We have a great panel lineup here tonight to talk about customer service chatbots. So just to get started really quickly, how about we just do a quick intro of yourself, who you are, what company and all you work for.
Derek Roberti, I work with Cognigy, Cognigy, and we're a company that is a conversation automation platform, which means we provide tools that help you build interfaces between humans and the systems and data they need access to, also called chatbots. And the company's based in Germany. I've been part of getting the US business started here in the past year. I focus on the technology side of the business. We have a number of mutual customers, and happy to be here.
Hi everyone, my name is Upkar and I work for IBM. That's IBM. So I'm a developer advocate at IBM, and that's what I do. I love to hang out with developers and work on, part of my portfolio is chatbots through our Watson Assistant tooling, and then I do other data science stuff as well. So, yeah. Cool.
Hi everyone, Paul Lasserre. I look after AI at Genesys. I'm not sure if you know Genesys. B2B software provider, over 10,000 customers in over 100 countries, mostly powering enterprise contact center. So in AI, Chatbot and VoiceBot is a big topic, obviously, among other products that are infused with AI.
So thanks again, guys, for being part of this. Just to kickstart this, why should customers, or companies, I should say, consider using chatbots for customer service?
So obvious answer is to decrease costs, improve user experience. I think those are kind of self-evident of what we're trying to do here. A framework that you can think about in your heads is really, when we have customers who are looking at this from a really strategic point of view, they're thinking about what are the automation technologies that are out there, such as Pipify, and RPA tools, business process management tools, process orchestration tools. They're kind of looking at this from a strategic view, and one of these tools in the toolkit is to say, how do we automate conversations? From an enterprise perspective, the driving goal is really to reduce costs. But if you can give users information consistently, quickly, 24 hours a day, then that creates a better user experience as well.
Yeah, maybe just to add to that, with the automation comes also the scalability part of it, and for enterprise, I feel that's also a very, very big use case. Before I came here, I was reading up on some of our reference clients, and there's a bank in France that has 5,000 branches, and they get 300,000 questions a day. And so for that sort of scale, it's really essential to automate a lot of this stuff, absolutely. And then I have some other insights into not the main goals for using chatbots, but something that came by the way of using them, which I'll go into later.
You want me to add?
Yeah, that's anything you want to add.
And so it turns out that implementing a good chatbot or a good voice bot is very hard. And so what we see in the market today, that of course, the initial intent is to reduce costs, provide 24/7 coverage while maintaining same NPS or higher. A huge interest from our customer at the moment, Genesys is still pretty heavy on voice channels, and chatbot and voicebot are more and more seen as an interface for better routing. Large banks today still have like hundreds and hundreds of 800 free toll numbers. And despite that, the average in the industry is about 30% transfer rate. So even with like an annoying IVR when you press 1 and then you press 2 and then you repeat yourself, like you hit an agent and then you tell again your story and then you transfer it over. That's very annoying. And voicebot or chatbot on digital channels is a great way to basically rethink your chat or your IVR strategy to provide a way better customer experience, even if you cannot provide self-service.
Yeah, this is great. So you talked about reducing costs, providing consistent responses, 24-hour availability, and actually a better user experience. What are the types of questions or use cases that you see customers building these customer service chatbots around? Are there any consistency in the types of use cases they resolve or handle?
Sure. So I guess like for us, for IBM, a lot of our clients are the very big enterprise-y clients. When I was going through the list, it was like insurance banking, and repeat, right? So for them, a lot of it starts off with maybe putting up or answering like low-hanging fruit, right? So maybe FAQ is a really good example, wherein I shouldn't have to wait for 5 minutes on the phone in order to get to a person just to ask what's the interest rate on my credit card. So that's how, like, that for us, that seems to be a very easy way to sort of get in, or that's like a very popular question that comes. And that's like the first tier, I would say, for us.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. A couple things I see that are maybe surprising. One is that for me, I'm very critical of anything we're doing with this technology to say, why is it relevant? Why is it better than alternatives that are out there? And I agree, the FAQ thing, for me, is kind of the least interesting thing, but it's what people start off with. And sometimes it's because there is no FAQ on the website. That the chatbot is almost an excuse to kind of take a lot of these questions that customer support is getting and finding some avenue to present those to customers. So as boring as FAQ is, it can also be quite helpful and give you some information there. For Cognigy, we're focused a lot, and probably these guys in different ways too, on process automation. So we're trying to say, how can we provide a conversational interface to help people accomplish things? And it could be things like triggering a support ticket, maybe uploading a document, getting information from that document, using that to create a case in ServiceNow, these kinds of enterprise scenarios. So many people, that is still a thing of fantasy, because they still want to get all their FAQs in the system. It's a good thing to do, but I think it's a state of what we see.
Yeah, especially even, I totally agree, even more so with breakthrough like BERT, that IBM, Microsoft, NVIDIA keep improving. So FAQ is really like progressing very fast. When you see what we can do today compared to 2 years ago, it's pretty good. Now, what we observe is that overall, that's usually below 20% of the queries. So it's a great start. It's a low-hanging fruit. It has many benefits, like creating an FAQ in the first place, but it's not enough. And so our recommendation often is to crack at least 2 or 3 transactional requests that are usually like personalized in some type of query in the backend, like check my balance or process a return. Don't try to boil the ocean, because I don't know if you've experienced many like good chatbot that can do a lot of things. It's, in my opinion, it's still pretty rare. But having a good chatbot that does like the 3 most common underwhelmed the 3 most common intents is amazing already. If you can do that, your top 3, maybe FAQ plus top 3 transactional requests, and then improve your routing to an agent, it's already a huge difference compared to the status quo.
Yeah.
Okay. One more thought to that. It's interesting if you look at Genesys, Cognigy, and you can tell me fill in the blanks for IBM as well, is that Genesys has roots in on-prem. We have our solution as kind of the first offering we make as an on-prem offering. And a lot of it is because facilitating transactions requires access to a lot of internal systems. So even though Dashbot's a fantastic SaaS-based solution, sometimes even if you start going down that direction, you kind of see things become as complicated as an on-prem solution would be. So even if on-prem means you host it in IBM's cloud, for example, it still starts looking at something that you really have to equip for the enterprise, and then that gets you to some of those transactional scenarios.
Fair enough. You touched upon the routing to live agents. Are there use cases that don't make sense for a chatbot in customer service?
And by the way, I don't know what's the rule of engagement, but anytime I think we're a small group, so feel free to ask questions, interrupt us. So that's kind of a conversation. So with that, so what was the question again? Like the use case that we don't recommend?
Yeah, the use cases that you don't recommend for customer service chatbots. You talked about escalating to a live agent. Are there any ones that you see that
I think there is like a false idea in the industry that people hate chatbots. And we survey people again and again. It's not so true. When we ask what people like, want, hate, chatbots, unlike what the headlines say, only come as a bad thing for 1 respondent out of 8. So most people just want to have a choice. They want to be able to self-serve or to talk to a human when needed. And so companies need to not be afraid of that. They need to provide a good experience, but in the first place, not to dismiss chatbot. There's still many. I think there are only 4% of enterprise today that are actively deploying bots. So it's still a vast minority. Now, I think once again, things not to do is to try to handle like 100 intents. We have one customer in the UK, like global brands, retail in the UK, which has 200 intents without a flow, and that's okay. But an army of developers in the back end, it's extremely complicated. Our advice very often is to really limit to the top 3-4 intents to really have a very good experience. Start with a very nice experience.
Fair enough. Are there any, well, I guess on a somewhat related note, were you surprised by any of the intents any of your customers are trying to handle? And it's okay if not, but if anything comes to mind.
I would just say, interesting you said that, Paul, is that for me it's volume that's interesting. For some people, handling 100 intents is like extremely valuable to them as a business. Other people need to come at it by handling 2,000 intents, so they're very different projects, very different resourcing, and very different outcomes. The thing to put here, if you don't, people work for a diverse set of companies here, but there's obviously companies who have outsourced call centers just for their employees' HR and benefits needs. So if you look at companies like that, if they can put a lot of their internal employee inquiries into a conversational interface and repository, then that's super valuable for them. But scale varies pretty dramatically, and I kind of agree. Smaller means you have more effective natural language processing.
And just maybe to clarify that, what we see is that volume is really where like the return on investment is. But what we see is that for usually the top 3, 4, 5 intents represent 60% of the volume. I'm curious what Dashbot in the industry on average. But you can get volume with a few very well-named use cases, and then keep like your agent, your workforce for the long tail.
It's interesting, you guys brought up the FAQs, that a lot of folks start with that. I mean, how do you approach building a customer service chatbot? Well, one of the things we've heard from other platforms is sometimes they'll have a customer that just wants to translate FAQs to a conversational interface and doesn't necessarily work, or it's too much content. I'm curious how you guys get started.
Well, you're faster, go ahead.
I was just going to say again, because I'm trying to be as critical as possible in our product, which probably shouldn't be here, but I always say is, first you have the content, and then next, does that content live somewhere? And then is it searchable? Is it updated regularly? If you don't have people who own those things, which have nothing to do with conversational interfaces, then all you're doing is creating another silo of content that's going to go stale over time and kind of alienate your users who are trying to get value out of it. So I would say as part of a project, I would do some self-reflection. I think where people do start siloing content in conversational systems, in our system, is because they feel powerless in some ways to influence their website. They feel powerless. There is no system, on SharePoint or wherever, where there are kind of all of these commonly asked questions that employees have. So you kind of go to the chatbot as like, here's a, finite tool that I can control and I can influence with a relatively small team. I think having those good content creation, management, and search practices in place is a good prerequisite.
It's, by the way, just jumping in, I think it's a very good startup project if anyone wants to start something. The knowledge management industry is so fragmented that there is definitely, so Cognigy, a company like you guys, like bring your contribution, but there is definitely opportunities to improve the state today of self and assisted conversations.
I was going to say the same thing. A lot of time the content is there, but it's everywhere. Yeah. Right. So we go through almost a workshop style of a thing with our clients, where we actually do that. We determine the existing state, and then we go into the gaps, and we have the pain points. What are you trying to solve? What is your goal? All that good stuff before we even go to the what is your first intent. Right. So that's very important.
How would you go about, or how do you see folks going about coming up with training phrases for these intents? Is it something you help with, or?
Yeah, so for us, when I talk to our product teams and the clients, a lot of times it's there hidden in some form of logs or call logs or something like that. So a lot of times for us, the intents and the content is is out there, and we just, the whole exercise of the workshop is to discover that and pull it out. But then a lot of times we also, we emphasize on how important it is to when you're creating intents or when you're training your model, to do it with live data and real customer data. So we will actually hold workshops with their clients as well to discover some of this.
What channels do you see folks building for? I mean, you talked about voice a bit. There's the chatbots. For customer service, do you see voice more than text, or vice versa, or what are you guys seeing?
Yeah, I would kind of divide the problems up into a few. One is, as Paul was saying, kind of the IVR space where voice is the channel, but it's voiced through telephone or that kind of traditional interface. But there's huge value there because you can skip hierarchical menus, get to the problem that you want to solve. For us, that's kind of like one kind of buyer. Outside of that scenario, voice is not super relevant for us as a company, I would say. When we think of customer service, it's as much internal as it is external. So for us, Slack, Skype for Business, Teams, those are kind of important channels for internal customer service, which is the nice thing about internal scenarios is, employees are a captive audience, and they have to kind of deal with whatever systems are available. So whatever weaknesses there are in the technology of natural language processing, employees need to be kind of patient with it. But it's those text-based channels, and then web chat on intranets and on websites, I think are big ones.
Hey, you guys seeing similar, or you're more on the voice side?
It's funny because Genesys was born as a voice company, but the trend for the past maybe 5+ years has been like really digital channels, more and more. That's where the growth is. And even at Genesys, leader in voice, we are kind of like thinking of voice like the past for some time, myself included. And we saw over the past few years a comeback of voice, which is quite impressive. Not selling the traditional IVR, traditional voice based, but just speech-enabled channels. When you see, it's funny, when a few years back I looked at my younger cousins or kids or friends, they were like never like picking the phone, they were just typing like hundreds and hundreds of texts a day. When you look at the same teenager today, they don't touch their phone, they talk to their phone. And so we see a huge comeback of speech in general, and that comes with a lot of like technological challenges for us, which are pretty exciting.
Upkar, before we forget, you mentioned some additional insights that you saw. So we were talking about some of the development. Does it touch upon?
Yeah, no. So that was more on like why would you use, or what's a good use case, or why would companies use chatbots? And it was interesting. I'm blanking out on the name of this client, but for them it was more of a compliance issue where they weren't able to train their human customer service reps to not say the wrong thing. And by using NLP plus rule-based chatbots, they were able to sort of handle that issue, which was, to me, that was interesting. Yeah. That was not why they got into this space, but that was sort of an added benefit.
Yeah, and it has, I guess, that consistency too. They don't say
that's it.
Consistency is the right word. Yeah, that's awesome. It's pretty cool. How are folks finding out about these customer service chatbots, whether it's the voice-based ones or the text web-based ones? How do your clients let their users know that it exists?
Yeah, it's interesting. Definitely, what we see is the kind of the soft launch. So it's first thing we do in Cognigy is we go on Teams and we're like, hey, this customer went live, and the next question is always like, well, where's the chatbot? It often starts hidden on a contact us or FAQ page of the website, and then customers improve them using Dashbot as their preferred tool. They learn what people are asking and improve those over time. And then what we kind of see is that the bot grows. This is for website scenario. The bot grows and kind of takes over more and more of the website. It's easier to find. They build confidence in it. So my answer is first, it's hidden. That's where it starts.
I'd say that, I mentioned that only, I think, 4% of enterprises actively deploying bots today, 40%. According to the last report I think I read from Gartner or Forrester, were planning on doing it. and 70–80% of white-collar jobs are going to use conversational AI in their job by 2022, according to Gartner. It's a prediction of Gartner, so we'll see. But just to say that the train has left the station. That's a very good time to be in this industry. Technology is progressing fast. That being said, I mentioned how hard this is to create a good experience with the bots, and therefore how the routing is meaningful for many of our clients. We also see two other trends. Analytics is one of them. A lot of customers want to start by really nailing what's going on in their gold mine of data, like what people are talking about on the phone, on the chat, before they take action. And companies like Augment, we have Brandon here, Tony, co-piloting, kind of like assisting employees in real time. It's kind of the flip side, the same technology on the other side of the same coin as bots. And a lot of customers are more tempted to start with this more prudent approach to assist their workforce with conversational AI, rather than going out there and automating everything.
Yeah, so same two use cases with us. So we see a lot of self-serve, where it's the employees or the clients serving themselves by using the bots, or it's the agent assist, as you mentioned. But to the point of even the employees, I understand it's easier to get them to use it, but a lot of times even that's voluntary, which to me is interesting. So not everybody has to use it, but as you start seeing how much faster the person next to you is able to answer by using this agent assist thing, then I think that helps. With IBM, we have our internal HR thing is a bot, and it's interesting if I go there and ask for help, it'll come up with relevant articles. And normally I find something that answers my question. If not, I'll say, hey, I need more help, or talk to an agent. And a lot of times it'll come back with, the agent's going to look up the same thing. The agent's going to use me, so might as well stay here. And that actually works.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
One other point on this, and kind of feeding off that too, is an enterprise scenario for internal. You have to decide, does your bot live on the intranet or through your internal communication tool?
Intranet.
Yeah. And that's common as well, but you kind of have to figure out, again, where are you hiding this chatbot in the enterprise? So one thing that you can do is in your Slack channels or in Teams or Skype for Business, have kind of chatbots that are organization specific, so you can kind of look up a chatbot on Skype and then start engaging with it that way. Internet's great if you know how to find the intranet, which is sometimes a challenge.
Yeah, I agree. I guess related to this, when you talked about NPS earlier, are you checking any of those types of scores, user satisfaction, CSAT, anything like that, to see are users satisfied or happy using these chatbots? Do you see that?
I can start. Yeah, I think we, at least for the type of customers Genesys is dealing with, we never see any company that say, yeah, I'm going to automate the heck out of it and I'm fine if my NPS is going to the toilets. It doesn't exist. So the condition is always to keep, even if you increase containment, is really to keep the customer experience at least as is and hopefully improved. Nobody's willing to make any trade-off on NPS.
Yeah, and I would say these are goals you can push into Dashbot and report on as well. If you have kind of basic thumbs ups, thumbs up, thumbs down kind of approach, it's easy to do it that way. If you have a kind of a more fine-grained NPS score, then you're probably using a tool for that already, and you can kind of push that data into that tool.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Quick addition to that, of the recall here is my wife works at Medallia, which is survey-based, voice of the customer company, and it's a very I respect highly this company as well as the Qualtrics and the other competitors in the field. What we see though is the market is going through more of an interaction-based voice of the customer, and that's great for companies like Genesys or Cognigy or IBM, where you have so much going on into your pipes that at any given point in time, you don't need to ask people how they feel, you can just infer. It's a huge difference in terms of customer experience.
Yeah, definitely. That's the nice part about the chatbots. Users actually tell you what they think, not just what they're looking for, but they often hear what they think. Sometimes not too pleasant, but it's at least get the feedback. Is something related to this? Are there KPIs that you're tracking towards, or how do you measure success here? We talked a little bit about containment and NPS. Are there certain things that folks are looking for in a customer service chatbot?
I think for us, the specifically for the customer service chatbot is deflection rate. So that's like a big one for us. So that basically is, how often do you not have to go to a live agent and the problem can be solved with the chatbot itself? That's a big one for us in this space, at least.
And the only thing I would add there, other than kind of the familiar metrics, would be depending on how you're empowering your teams, people's ability to automate aspects of their job that they would rather not do. So customer service exists in a lot of forms. You're going to have a 5,000 person contact center or centers. You can also have individual people who have to monitor inboxes in the enterprise to answer questions about tax or HR or whatever. When people can automate aspects of their jobs that they don't necessarily enjoy doing, then that can be a measure of success itself.
Yeah, we see an interesting change here with AI in general, where the traditional buyer and customer service used some proxies, like SLAs around transfer rates, average landing time, first call resolution. That's all the metrics that you use in contact centers. And the big change with AI, bots being a key element, but not only, like how you route, when you decide to engage, how you assist your employees real time, is to connect directly your customer service operations with the core business outcomes. Sales, retentions, cost obviously. And so having this ability to correlate directly what's going on into your customer service department with what matters to the business totally changes the conversation, because you don't talk anymore to the contact center manager, you're talking to the CMO, the CXO, the CEO of the company.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's actually pretty interesting. We were talking a little bit about human agents. Like the chatbot would say the agent's going to look at the same thing I'm looking at. How do you interact? Like, how do you handle that interaction, or perhaps hand off to the agent? Like, are there certain use cases or times when it's appropriate to do that? And then related to it, do you let the user know they're now talking to an agent versus the user acting like the agent acting like they're still part of the chatbot? Anything you guys see in there?
Well, it's interesting. We get asked about this quite a bit from a technology perspective, is how I kind of encounter it. Technology part is pretty easy. But I was curious if anyone in the audience has had a agent handover where you've been talking to a chatbot and then been transferred to an agent in real life. Does anyone have?
Amazon.
Okay, yeah, Amazon, great. Because I have not seen a lot of people actually implement that. And I think it's because they have different channels for live agent versus chatbot. There's a number of chatbot tools and kind of point solutions for customer support specifically, or kind of tools like that probably have some of that built into it. But from a technical perspective, it's straightforward to do, but I haven't seen a ton of it in the real world. Do you guys?
We do it like routing is kind of an omni-channel, is kind of the bread and butter sorry, of a company like Genesys. So we do it, but more fundamentally, it's like, can you name like very quickly 10 great chatbot or voice bot today, like companies you use as a consumer? In the first place, you don't have that many, and then you have even fewer that do a good job at escalating. The few great success stories we have at Genesys, yeah, the trick is to use point solutions, so it's very hard to escalate, it's very hard to merge the data models. Then you really want to make sure that you provide the intents, you have like a fully integrated experience with the desktop, whether that's from the same vendor or well integrated with Salesforce. So that's hard to do today for most enterprises.
So the second part of the question was if you care, if you've been told if it's a bot or not, and I'm wondering, were you told that you would transfer to a person?
I had the choice of if I wanted to go to phone or if I wanted to go to chat.
Oh, okay.
Which I
Okay.
appreciated.
All right, so I feel like that's a little bit different use case, but did anybody see like Google I/O I think it was last year when they had that phone call with the bot? Yeah. That freaked me out. So for me, I want to know if I'm talking to a human or not.
Yeah. No, that was cool because they would do the arms and stuff like that. Yeah, duplex, right? I think that was cool. Yeah, that was really cool. Just a couple more and then we'll open up to the audience. So, what do you all see are some of the challenges ahead for customer service chatbots?
I think maybe building Upkar, like that's the ethical challenges are clearly in general with AI, and in particular in contact centers, raise a new set of questions the industry did not deal with in the first place. So one of my colleagues, Jean-Etienne Goubet here, who manages our AI ethics committee operations, and typically customers more and more come to us with the usual suspects are around, okay, what does it mean for my workforce in terms of quantity and quality of work? How do you make sure, Genesys or IBM or Cognigy, that you are going to train well these bots and you are not going to use biases with the transcript you use, or transparency? How can we make sure people know when they interact with a machine versus a human? So not easy questions. We've come with what we thought were like good guidance for the industry. We've studied a 1 year long conversation with our partner, with our customers, with analysts, and tried collectively to find the best answers to these difficult questions.
Yeah, and then what you said in the beginning, building good quality chatbots are hard, and I feel like just clients don't understand that right now. They're looking for the magic bullet where, you know, here's ours is Watson Assistant, and we'll do everything for you, but no, it won't. You have to still train it on your domain. That takes time, it takes a lot of effort. That's one. And also, I was thinking of like, you get spam calls, right? You know, I'm pretty sure at some point chatbots will start calling, right? So that, for me, that would be a challenge.
You need your chatbot to respond. So
This is a good startup line,
So one last question, we'll open up the answer. Do you have any predictions for the future where you see this stuff's going with the chatbots? You talked a little bit about the
Well, I would say it's, Paul kind of said this, and I'll kind of say it my own way too, which is Gartner has all these great predictions about chatbot adoption, and I read them, say them every day too, and I'm always kind of like, wow, do I really believe what I'm saying? And I don't. I think that, you know, a prediction is the hope for those of us who have platforms is that, for me, money's being left on the table in the sense that there's so much value in the technology, even in its current state and even in its imperfect state, that I feel like there's a lot of underinvestment at all levels, from small business to enterprise, in this kind of a technology. I think people don't know how to resource it. They're intimidated by what they perceive the price point would be. They don't know how to do a project. And so a lot of people just aren't getting started. So I think for me, a positive prediction would be more people start taking advantage of even the technology in its state today.
Let you finish. So maybe two trends. One is hyper personalization. I think more and more as we connect the data models and have like a 24/7 like way to engage at the best time, the best channel, with the best resource, we're going to see more and more personalization into customer service. And the second is that we will, and it's a big ask from the enterprise world and business world in general, is to merge, to break silos among departments in the company, customer service, sales, marketing mostly. It's been like wishful thinking so far, and that finally become possible as you unite your system and transform your contact center, you know, from a center of cost to a center of profit.
So for me, I think like one is just a sheer amount of bots. Yeah. So we actually do this right now with our tooling. Is you create an assistant, which is your bot, and then you assign skills to your assistant, and the skills are your actual conversations or dialogues, or, you know, that's the content. And so I think in the future, not so far, would be sort of bots teaching each other their skills or sharing skills, or like a marketplace for skills where you can, you know, borrow the skill from another bot or something like that. The other big one for me is like the whole data privacy thing. I mean, with all that's going on right now, I feel that's going to affect how we build bots and how we think about it in very near future, I feel.
Yeah.
That's a question for you guys, actually.
Oh no, we're GDPR compliant. You know, don't send us PII. It's a concern. We have all sorts of stuff there prescribing it. So we work with similar companies to you guys who mentioned, insurance companies, financial institutions, and all that. And We've passed every security audit we've been through, so it's something that we take very seriously. That being said, anyone in the audience have any questions?
Can you talk about machine learning, deep learning, and the role it plays in the bots that you had experience with, and also maybe some details about how many examples you need to get good performance?
You already had it up here, so okay. For the examples bit, so with our tooling, it says 5 to 7 examples per intent is enough, and so in real world, it's usually more like 200. But it's amazing how well it does even with 5. Part of that is also being able to retrain your model on the fly as you're testing it out. So you give it an intent it doesn't understand, to be able to quickly retrain it. And that's like when you're getting started, of course, you probably use a different approach if you have a lot of different intents and automate that process of training the model. The other part I see, I haven't used it a lot, and I don't think we don't do it in Watson Assistant, is the whole natural language generation bit. So not just processing and understanding, but being able to reply on the fly without me as a trainer to give it what to reply with.
Yeah, adding to that, I think deep learning has been clearly a breakthrough in many areas for customer service, mostly around, as far as we're concerned, NLU and speech, clearly. Now, even today, neural networks are not the answers to every type of use cases we see. We still use, and look, Kaggle, like most competition today, are still won by extreme gradient descent boosting algorithms. And so do we at Genesys, for instance, for all the problem where you have like, hey, what's all the attributes of the agents, of the customer, and you have like a finite like outcome, like usually random forest or this type of algorithm perform better than deep learning, plus, or at least as well as deep learning. Plus they give this great advantage of providing visibility, a white box approach where you can give some type of explainability to the customer versus like CNN or the end of the
One of the things we do is phrase clustering around all the actual messages that users either say or write into the chatbot, and then we can show like semantic similarities. You can see potential phrases that you should add to your intent to retrain the model. And it was touched upon at the beginning here. One way to do this too is if you have all those call center logs, you can run them through the same thing and say, oh, these are effectively the intents users are trying to ask, and here are some of the training phrases you can use.
You guys were talking about personalization towards the end. One of the things I've seen my experience so far with chatbots is it's much more what you talked about in terms of the, okay, it's going to get you to the operator who's going to, like, who knows who's prepped for your question, or it's still functioning sort of almost on a tree format. And I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on, okay, where are we going to end up in the next 3 to 5 years with the ability of the chatbot to also retrieve my information when I call in. So I'm not having to say, the last 4 digits of my social are. It's like, oh, okay, as soon as we know you're Andrew, we know these 5 other things about you, and it becomes more of a conversational dialogue. Is that 5 years out? Is that 2 years out? Is that 10 years out?
I think I actually had an experience. It was a phone company, I forget which one, but they were using voice recognition to figure out who I was, and then I had to train it a couple of times. Like the 7th time I called, it was a little bit more sure about it, which is fine. So that's what I've had. So I think some of that is already there. But a lot of what we do as well is, depending on where you're coming from, you have certain contexts. We know certain things about you. For example, if it's intranet, then you're probably signed in somewhere, so you have something on you, right? And the same thing with Slack. We probably have your username. We can look up. So there's a lot of context already there, which is not being used. So I feel like that there's definitely improvements to be made, but I think some of that is already here.
Yeah, I think from a technology perspective, a lot of the core capabilities are there in the sense that we have data on customers and CRMs and stuff like that. at the beginning of an interaction, we can retrieve this data and then use that to help guide the conversation. We know something about the user, the last support ticket they bought, or file, the last product they bought. So that kind of stuff is there. One thing that what your question made me think about is where the online ads world is. So kind of like when you come to a website, they know enough about you to start giving you ads that they think are relevant to your zip code and sometimes even the block on which you live. They know other websites you visited and other products you might be interested in. And that's a place where I've never seen a chatbot who kind of knows me as well as online ads.
Yeah.
I was just wondering what you guys have seen in terms of authoring models for a lot of these bots. The stuff we're working with, like intensive entity recognition, is so tedious to actually create any kind of deep conversation. And the visual models, you know, flowcharts and stuff, it's like using Scratch or something. It's just wondering if you got any insight how we can all be a lot more productive to create expressive bots that satisfy and entertain.
It's a great question. You can start. I think that's one of the area for improvement. Frankly, in the industry, a lot of the vendors are still pretty much like, when they have an authoring tool, it's mostly directed dialogues still. It's fine for simple use cases or business processes. When you're a big bank or a big telco, it falls short. It becomes very quickly overwhelming. So, huge area of development at Genesys, for instance, where we try to import some of the techniques from gaming and others for more fluid dialogue management systems. Yeah, you name like goods, yes, pre-goods, but I'm hopeful. I know Google is working on it, some of the companies are working on it, that we'll see better management tool authoring tools that are both easy to use and really do a better job of just running trees, which doesn't scale.
Any other questions? Well, we appreciate the panel for being part of this. Thanks again for being part of it. And thanks everyone for coming out. I think there's probably still some drinks and maybe a little bit of food left over, but you're all welcome to keep chatting with each other. But thanks again. Appreciate it.